But the key is what happens then when the coach yells at you, or you have a negative play and you start getting down on yourself. And that's why I told you we'd come back to that other story with that high school girl. So we'll jump into that right here. But this is where we get into triggers. And this is one of the things that makes the Game Ready one of the most amazing tools, because, Dustin's talked about Joe Dispenza. I've talked about Joseph Grenny. There's so many amazing people out there in the sports world that are doing great mind work. What the Game Ready does is it can layer over the top of any of that you already have, and it makes it more actionable, more accessible in the moment to perform at higher levels. And one of the main ways we do that is through the triggers. So what happens is, for example, well, let me give you triggers. Usually when we think of triggers, we think of it like people who are trying to, get off addictions, right? And they got triggered and now they fell back into addiction. It's the most common use of the word trigger in our society. So, but that's on the negative side. The other way to trigger is trigger towards the positive. It's just something that, boom, gets you almost like addicts will tell you, like they almost feel like in a trance. Someone who's addicted to crack cocaine or pornography, it's like as soon as it hits, it's like a trance that they go into. It's the same way on the positive side. And when you can trigger yourself back into these things, boom, and out of all those negative emotions that we talked about, the guilt, the shame, all these things, it just changes and allows you to stay in the zone longer. I mean, that's why in the NBA, you always see them call timeouts. When Steph Curry goes off, every coach is calling a timeout once he hits 3 or 4 in a row. Right? The whole point is to try to get him out of the zone. Well, this one particular player had her coach actually yell at her. She was playing amazing. Every parent in the stands was turning around and saying something to her mom. Like, wow, where did this come from? Who's this girl? And then the coach yelled at her and boom, error, 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 error. And she came off the court after that match. This is at state championships. And she was just like, Josh, man, I sucked, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you were playing awesome. Didn't you feel great? Weren't you doing well? She's like, yeah. Your coach yelled at you. And that was when everything changed. What happened? And so we talked about what she was feeling. And we talked about, the shame, all these things, living up to other people's expectations. I've got to be perfect. And that's where, we went into the triggers. And one of the triggers we use, and the trigger that helped her in this case, was what we call them the beast triggers. And they're actual animals that we use to personify the intentions and the game ready process for you while we're going through that game ready process, actually visualizing yourself as that beast. And so for her, it was the bald eagle. And I know Dustin loves the bald eagle too. Maybe there's some similarities.
Yeah, let me interject before you go off. I know you got some great stuff, but yeah, I like to think of this as like kind of like the old school Mario, where it's like maybe you're like the baby Mario, and if you get hit one more time, you die, but you find like a mushroom, and that's kind of like the trigger, where it's like you get knocked down, but it's like I have this mushroom to like kind of come back. And so this last game we played, I just had like a really good game the game before. And then this last game, played against one of the best servers in the league, and our scouting report was like the step left on him. And so I was in area 1, he cut it back, aced me. Then I got aced in the seam, even though it was kind of like the other guy's ball. And then I got aced again. So I was like already 3 aces in one set. I was just like, come on, man. But it's just like, okay, back to the trigger, which was the RESPA. So it's like, all right, I'm back, I'm normal sized again. And it's just like, how can we empower ourselves? There's different ways. Triggers is a great way to come back to that present moment. Let the past go, let the failures of the past go, let the anxiety, insecurities of the future that may await us, and find ourselves in the present moment in whatever way. And so with the animals too, I like it because I was explaining to a teammate, it's like, you know what, maybe sometimes you don't feel confident, you don't feel aggressive, you don't feel like you can have this grittiness, but with the animal, you just picture yourself as the animal. And by turn, you take these qualities, you absorb these qualities that these animals have. And so it's like a way of kind of hacking like our self, like, what's the word? Like imposter syndrome, like hacking our imposter syndrome, where it's like taking the form of this animal. It's like, I can't be confident, but it's like, or aggressive, but like with the lion, it's like, oh, but the lion's aggressive. And so you just kind of picture yourself as the lion, like, I'm going to go, like, I'm that lion. And so it's a fun way of just kind of like hacking the mind and just coming back. And then again, capturing these characteristics that are going to help you get that next point: clarity, confidence, aggressive. And so it's a fun way of bringing yourself out of your mind, which, like, what is it? 70-80% of your thoughts are negative, reoccurring negative thoughts. So it's a way to get out of your mind and to be more clear and what you need to get done to help your team get to the next point.